This is Kent Hovind, and this is question and answer on his seminar series. I want to give this a listen and just kind of debunk it as we go. So let's see what he has to say. He's a young Earth creationist who pretends to like science, but really does not.
Questions. Everybody seems to have a question that they need answered in life. Hi, my name is Eric. In this next seminar, Dr. Hovind takes a large variety of questions that he's been asked on a regular basis and combines them and gives his best explanation for what's happening. He covers a variety of topics such as the Red Sea crossing, primitive man, what about radiocarbon dating? Hey, are there really contradictions in the Bible?
Absolutely, yes. Oh my God, there are so many.
Find out for yourself in this seminar entitled Questions and Answers.
You know, I honestly really like their intro and stuff. It's pretty cool, actually.
Welcome to our very informal question and answer session where we deal with questions that are not covered in our seminar on creation evolution. For those just getting this material, my name is Kent Hovind. I taught high school science for 15 years and now do seminars on creation and evolution since early 1989. I've been doing this. The Bible tells us...
I gotta say, the seminar series is actually very impressive. I mean, it's bullshit from beginning to end. The entire thing is nonsense. It's lie after lie after lie, but it's very well put together and coordinated and planned. It's pretty impressive.
He said, I applied my heart to know and to seek and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things. 1 Peter chapter 3 tells us that we should be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh us a reason of the hope that's in us. I think it's good for Christians to study the truth so that they can give an answer to those that are not Christians. And it's good for those of you that are not Christians to study the truth so that you can become Christians. When you get to the top of the mountain of truth, you'll find the Christians were sitting there all along.
That's such a cliche at this point. Oh my God, I hear every Christian say that. Yes, very clever.
God's word is truth. In 2 Timothy chapter 2, the Bible tells us we should study to show ourselves approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So, in this session, we're going to deal with quite a few miscellaneous questions. If you have questions that are not covered here or elsewhere in the seminar, feel free to send them in. We'll try to deal with them as time permits on our website, drdino.com, or on our radio program, or possibly in a future edition of our question-answer tapes.
I looked at the radio program, and as far as I can tell, it's some random, nutcase madman ranting at a microphone. I couldn't even make sense of what he was saying. I think he's actually mentally ill.
One question I often get when I say I believe in creation, they're going to say, oh, wait a minute, all scientists believe in evolution. Well, that's simply not true, okay? The vast majority of scientists may believe, majority of scientists may believe in evolution, but it depends on what you mean by evolution. But all scientists do not believe in evolution.
I actually heard something really interesting about this the other day. Somebody said, have you guys heard of the Steve Project? Every time Kent Hovind tries to prove how many people agree with him, how many scientists agree with him, this dude that I was talking to the other day, he's a YouTuber, brings up the Steve Project. And the Steve Project is, it's Project Steve, actually. It's a list created by the National Center for Science Education in 2003 in response to creationist lists of scientists who doubt evolution. It features scientists named Steve who support the theory of evolution. And I think it's up to 1,500 names or something like that. So you can give me a list of scientists who deny evolution, and I'll give you an even bigger list of Steve scientists that support it.
And even if they did, that's not how you determine truth. It is possible for the majority to be wrong. History shows us there are many times when the majority is wrong. The majority of scientists used to teach that all the planets go around the Earth.
Do you know why they believed that at the time? Geocentrism? Because they didn't have any evidence to back up what they believed, to back up their position. The evidence did not exist. They just believed it. But we have evidence to back up our positions now. And you know what? If the evidence goes contrary to what we believe, then we should change our beliefs. And in the scientific community, not that I'm a scientist, but I appreciate science. In the science community, the science culture or whatever, people who care about science, we do that. We change our mind if evidence comes in. That's all we need, evidence. There is no evidence that evolution is not real. In fact, there is positive evidence that it is real, overwhelming evidence. So I don't want to hear it.
That is wrong, as far as we know. By the way, there's still some folks who believe in the geocentric theory. I don't fight them. I disagree with them. But
Why don't you fight them? Why don't you fight them, Kent? You did this whole, literally, I would guess, 40-hour-long seminar episode set. Yeah, maybe 25 hours. You literally, and how many hours did he spend preparing this seminar series? Do you know why he doesn't fight the geocentrists? Because they're predominantly Christian. God, what a scumbag, dude, really.
there are really some surprising number of folks who believe in the geocentric theory. But for years, many people thought, the majority of people taught, that the heavy objects fall faster than lighter objects. That was taught for 2,000 years, and it's wrong. It's not true. For many years, it was taught if you're sick, you have...
I don't think that was taught. I don't think that they investigated it. I could be wrong. Maybe it was taught.
Bad blood. Take out your blood and you'll get better. That is simply wrong. It's not true. They were
bloodletting. Yep, that's true. I mean, you're giving us a list of things of bad ideas that people had, of stupid stuff people did.
Places all over the country to get your blood taken out. They had little white poles out front with a red stripe around it. The barber was the bloodletter. So even if a majority of scientists do believe something, that doesn't make it true. Let me give you an example here from the book of John, chapter 7. The people, therefore, they were arguing about Christ, and they said, when they heard this saying, said, of a truth, this is the prophet. Others said, this is the Christ. But some said, shall Christ come out of Galilee? Hath not the Scripture said that Christ cometh of the seed of David, out of the town of Bethlehem, where David was?
Yeah, this is actually one of the reasons why I believe that Jesus was a real person, because there was a prophecy in the Old Testament about where the Messiah will come from, the Son of Man. And that prophecy basically says that they will come out of Bethlehem, I believe. And Jesus was born in Nazareth, so it didn't make any sense that he would end up in Bethlehem. So they rewrote part of his story or whatever to make it so that he was born in Bethlehem, even though he was of Nazareth. They rewrote his life story to include a census that never happened. That wasn't real. There's no such census. There's never been such a census to take place in history where your ancestors from 1,000 years ago have to go back to their ancestral homeland. We live in the age of the internet, and I don't know where my ancestors lived 1,000 years ago. I don't know where my ancestors lived 100 years ago. Well, maybe 100. But the point is, this is one of those verses that makes me believe that Jesus was real. He was just a dude, in one man's humble opinion. I'm willing to have my mind changed. This is a pretty contentious issue with a lot of people in the atheist community.
Here's the Hovind translation. They're arguing about the wrong subject. They were arguing, should Christ come out of Bethlehem or Galilee? And they thought Jesus came from Galilee, so he can't be the Christ. They didn't realize he came from Bethlehem. So he was the Christ, obviously. He did come from Bethlehem, but he was raised in Galilee. In John chapter 7, it says, there was a division among the people because of him, and some of them would have taken him, but no man laid hold on him. What I get from this verse is, if you don't like somebody, if you don't like their message, kill the messenger. And this you see a lot in the creation evolution arguments. If you watch some of my debates, I've had over 80 debates now at universities. Oftentimes they get so angry at me because of what I'm saying.
I'm not angry at you. I just think that you're a fucking idiot and you're intentionally setting out to deceive people.
I'm just delivering a message. I'm just telling you what the truth is from science and what God's Word says. Don't get angry at me. There are over 500 anti-Hovind websites. They really don't like me.
Such a martyr.
And they all want to get me into an email debate. And then they say, I won't debate them. I won't get an email debate them, but I'll debate them publicly anytime, anywhere. I don't have time for an email debate. I type 12 words a minute with 19 mistakes. I simply don't have time.
That's so funny. OMG. You don't get into an email debate because you could be fact-checked easily, first of all. And second, because you want the publicity, of course.
Hey, we have run a real busy ship around here. The next verse says, then came the officers to the chief priests and Pharisees, and they said unto him, why have ye not brought him? Now get the picture here. The Pharisees sent the officers off to get Jesus, and then they came back without him, and they said, why didn't you get him? And the officers said, never man spake like this man. Here's the Hovind translation. The professors sent their students off to ask the heretic questions, but the professors didn't go themselves. I get this a lot. I'll speak at universities, the professor doesn't show up.
Okay, wow, dude. Is he comparing himself to Jesus right now? It feels like that's kind of what he's doing, subtly.
To ask questions, but he sends his students with a list of questions. And you'll see the student pull out a list of questions, and they're going to trip up Hovind on something, So they ask me their questions, and I answer all of them. And then they go back and tell their professor, well, he answered all my questions. And the professor says, well, you should have asked him this and this and this. Well, you coward, you should have come yourself, professor. Don't send your students off to do your dirty work if you got a question.
Is he formulating some fictitious bullshit, scenario in his head? Like, he's creating a fictitious enemy in his head, and then he's defeating this fake enemy that he's created. What the fuck is going on right now?
Question, give me a call. What I also get from this verse is the Pharisees decided they're going to use the law. They're going to legally try to stop this guy from sharing this message. They wanted to shut Jesus up.
Oh, and you're a victim of lawfare or something, right, Kent?
And there are people who will use legal tactics to try to shut up the Christian. They try to exclude Christianity from public schools.
No, I don't actually. That's not true. I try to exclude Christianity from being taught in public schools. I don't want teachers leading children in prayers. I don't want them encouraging one religion over another. I don't want teachers pushing it down kids' throats. If a kid wants to pray in class, if a teacher wants to pray, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. If a kid wants to pray at lunchtime over his food or something, go nuts. If a teacher wants to pray over their food at lunch, go nuts. I don't give a fuck. Why would I care? I care about people trying to force others to be involved in what they're up to.
They can't handle the message, so they shut down the message so people don't get a chance to hear it. And that's what I see in John chapter 7. Then answered them, the Pharisees, are ye also deceived? The Pharisees are saying, are you stupid? Then they said, have any of the rulers or the Pharisees believed on him? Notice this. Their evidence that Jesus could not be the Messiah was because they didn't believe he was the Messiah. Therefore, he can't be because we don't believe he is. You get the same kind of logic with some of these professors in colleges. They'll say, well, all scientists believe in evolution, therefore it must...
No, they don't. Not all scientists believe in evolution. All scientists accept evolution as the fact that it is. But okay.
be true. That's ridiculous, okay? They don't all believe in it, and even if they did, that doesn't make it true. You can see the same parallel 2,000 years ago in the book of John. Then the Pharisees...
Dude, what a wild reach to claim that you are persecuted like Jesus because you don't believe in evolution, you don't accept it. Absurd.
He said, this people who know not the law are cursed. Here's the Hovind translation of this verse. We have knowledge, you don't. We don't approve of your degree. You're ignorant if you don't believe in evolution. And you'll see this a lot in the creation-evolution argument. They'll say, we're smart, everybody else is dumb. I get this a lot when I do debates. They'll say, well, the average person in the audience probably doesn't understand the complexity of this topic. And I'll say, folks, what he's trying to tell you is, you're dumb, he's smart.
No, it's just a very complex topic.
And it's precisely what they're trying to say in a subtle way. The next verse, verse 50 says, Nicodemus saith unto them, he that came to Jesus by night, doth our law judge any man before it hear him, and know what he doeth? They answered and said unto him, art thou also of Galilee? Search and look, for out of Galilee ariseth no prophet. And every man went to his own house. Even some of the non-believers were smart enough to realize this guy's telling the truth. And we get people by the thousands that write our ministry or call us and say, look, I was not a believer, but I saw your material on creation, and I'm convinced creation is true. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to convince you that God's word is true.
No, you're not. You're trying to convince them that your understanding of the world around you is true. It has nothing to do with teaching them that God is real. People can believe in God and not accept your nonsense.
The whole argument here in John 7 started with a false assumption that Jesus came out of Galilee. Okay, they're arguing about the wrong topic. The Pharisees didn't believe in him, so they said that's proof he can't be the Christ because we don't believe him. If he was, we would believe in him. That's silly. That's the same thing you used to get today. Skeptics will say, well, have any of these creationists published in science journals? And when they say no, they'll say, see, that proves he can't be right.
No. Nobody says that you're wrong because you haven't published in scientific journals. It has nothing to do with it.
That's their logic, okay? It doesn't take a few seconds to think how dumb that is. First place, creationist material is routinely excluded from science journals.
Why the fuck do you think?
Science journals. Because they've started with the definition that science cannot include the supernatural. Therefore, if your explanation isn't 100% natural, it's not science.
That's correct, yes. By definition, science is our understanding of the world around us, the way that we know, what we know, or whatever. If it's supernatural, then prove to me that a supernatural thing happened, and we'll go from there. We need proof of everything.
Therefore, creation is by definition not science. That's their thinking. They don't realize evolution is not science. Evolution is based purely on the assumption that things happen. It's never observed or tested or demonstrated in the laboratory. It's purely religious. The majority can often be wrong. The majority followed Aaron in rebellion in Exodus chapter 32. The majority voted not to go into the promised land in Numbers chapter 32. The majority followed false gods many times throughout the Old Testament. Read through it and you'll see. The majority...
Again, it's not about being the majority. It's that we are so sure that we are correct on this issue that there isn't a single dissenter. It's not an argument from the majority. It's that only fucking morons would argue that it's not real. That's the problem here. He's trying to turn an argument where people say there is no dissent because there are no questions, they're answered. He's turning that into an argument from the majority.
It's wrong. The majority of religious leaders hated Jesus. The majority of the world hates Christians. So it is not true that all scientists believe in evolution. If it were, that wouldn't matter, okay? And you don't determine truth that way. But let me share with you a few Christians who are scientists, who are strong believers in creation, and who are also very brilliant scientists. Robert Gentry, a friend of mine from Tennessee, is a brilliant scientist when it comes to radioactive material and the disposal of radioactive waste. He worked at Oak Ridge Laboratories. He published this book here, Creation's Tiny Mysteries. Excellent book about radiopolonium halos. You can get it through our ministry, in our bookstore, or on our website. Robert Gentry was doing tremendous work. It was published in many major science journals about radiopolonium halos being found in granites all over the world. I went and met with Robert Gentry, saw the polonium halos through the microscope in his laboratory, and everybody was fine until they realized, wow, his research proves the Big Bang theory is not true.
What?
And boy, they shut off his funding and his grant money in a hurry. He finally said, well, we don't have a job for you anymore, just because his research was supporting creation. Dr. Robert Gentry.
Give it up. God, he is a perpetual victim, dude. He cannot help but to be victimized 24/7.
Up in Halo, go to www.halos.com and see for yourself. Roger DeHart was a science teacher near Seattle, Washington. He was told he could not inform his students of errors in the textbooks.
Bullshit. I'm sorry, I just don't believe it, first of all. And second, you've given us a single example. This is not a systemic problem that exists in society. I think what you mean to say is probably he couldn't inform his students that creationism is real and claim that the verifiable, rock-solid facts in the textbook are not real. That would be my guess.
Here they've got textbooks with mistakes in them, but he couldn't tell the students about the mistakes because those mistakes were used to support the evolution theory. They said you can't even pass out current science journals to inform students of mistakes in the textbooks.
Oh my God, it's so fucking stupid, dude. We don't know this situation, but you know what? Let's find out. Who was it? What name did he lay down? Here. Burlington Edison High School. Hovind slide. Near Seattle, Washington, could not inform students of errors in textbooks by passing out articles from current science journals. No need to wonder, just loaded up our question gun. Let's go answer hunting. Roger DeHart was a biology teacher at Burlington Edison High School who used intelligent design materials in his class. So he was a creationist. For example, the textbook of pandas and people and the film Inherit the Wind. I've never heard of that. Pandas and people and the film Inherit the Wind. I've never heard of Inherit the Wind before. 1960s film. In 1999, a student parent complained to the ACLU that DeHart's lessons promoted intelligent design, which critics say is religious. It is religious. I don't know why they'd write that on this. In a public school biology class. Oh, that was a citation from the Discovery Institute, I see. The school district responded by telling him to stop teaching intelligent design. So this was an example of a creationist trying to shove creationism down people's throats and then getting in trouble for it. That's basically what it was. Trying to impose his religious beliefs on people around him and use the force of the state to do so. He didn't just stand on a street corner and shout it out. He tried to shove it down people's throats by force, by using the state to do it. That is some scumbag shit right there.
In them, but he couldn't tell the students about the mistakes because those mistakes were used to support the evolution theory.
This is just a lie.
They said you can't even pass out current science journals to inform students of mistakes in the textbooks.
Again, just a lie.
That's not science. That's that, burn the heretic attitude that some people get, or go burn the witch, And there's talk about a witch hunt. The evolutionists are on a witch hunt against the creationists in the public schools.
Oh, yeah, you're such a victim, this poor guy. Oh, so mistreated.
They will try desperately to get them fired from their job. Kevin Haley was a biology teacher at Central Oregon Community College in Bend, Oregon. He lost his job simply because he was exposing errors in the textbooks.
Again, this is probably another example of the exact same thing. Let's see. Okay, he did lose his position, but not for exposing errors in textbooks. The actual reason Haley's contract was not renewed after multiple students and faculty complained that he was teaching creationism, bringing religious beliefs into the classroom, attacking evolution theory whenever it appeared in the textbook, and allegedly giving preferential treatment to students in his Christian club. Wow, dude, that is fucked up. This is from the Chronicle of Higher Education, by the by, chronicle.com. It kind of outlines exactly what happened. College administration's position. So this was a college course, I guess, according to the Chronicle. College administration's position, Louis Query, vice president for instruction, stated that 5 students filed formal complaints and others complained informally, and that Haley refused to work out a resolution with these complaints despite repeated opportunities. His counterclaim, Haley denied teaching creationism and claimed administrators were uncomfortable with his devout Christianity, accusing them of harassment. So what we have here is an example of a creationist trying to make a big thing out of nothing. If you're a creationist and you don't like evolution, then don't teach biology classes, for example. If you're a flat earther, don't teach geology classes. Seriously, what the fuck? This is an example of creationists looking for an opportunity to weaponize Christianity against people that they don't like. Looking for an opportunity to get a little public attention, a little media, so that they can convince everybody that they are persecuted.
Say, kids, information on page 87 has been proven wrong. Disregard that. That won't be on the test. And he's right. It was proven wrong.
No, it wasn't.
I debated one professor one time, and I gave out like 20 or 30 lies in the textbooks, and he got up and said, now, folks, Hovind's right. All these things are not true. But, he said, Hovind, I got a question. What are you going to replace all this with?
I doubt anybody would ever say that because that's fucking stupid. That is what creationists say. That is not what scientists say. It doesn't matter what we have to replace anything with. What matters is the truth value of what's being said, and nothing that Hovind has said so far is true. Just a reminder, I would really appreciate it if you guys checked out my Patreon. If you're not going to donate, you don't have to, but follow me there at the very least. owenmorgan.com/Patreon. Just in case something happens with the government or whatever. It would be really good if you had some way to connect with me and my content. I'm really concerned about that, and maybe you should consider that for other creators too.
In other words, we can't take the lies out of the books until I find a replacement. In other words, I've got to provide evidence for his theory.
No, that's not accurate.
Or else we can't take the lies out of the books. Talk about dumb. That's not the way science works, okay? You teach the kids the truth. Just teach the truth, okay? And if all you have are lies to back up your theory, then get a new theory. In Texas, Baylor University fired William Dembski just because he advocated that there might be an intelligent designer. That's heresy. There could be a designer. You're out of here. You're fired.
Well, that's not science. I'm sorry. Let me step back one more. Who was it? Baylor University in Waco, Texas. Look, there's a massive typo in this because he advocated intelligent design. Why are there so many typos in this? Bikazu. Sounds like a Japanese word. Yeah, if you are advocating for intelligent design, you should be fired from your biology position. Absolutely, without question, of course. Are you serious?
That's heresy. There could be a designer. You're out of here. You're fired. Forrest Mims was a science writer for 20 years. He published in National Geographic, Science Digest, American Journal of Physics, over 60 magazines and newspapers. He was denied a job as science writer for Scientific American simply because he was a creationist.
No, no one cares if you're a creationist. It's what you do as a creationist that is unacceptable. It's when you go in the classroom and try to force your beliefs on others around you that it becomes a problem, obviously.
They didn't want to have a creationist on their staff. Teacher Rod LeVake was told he could not share information that might help students doubt Darwin's theory. See, Darwin's theory is sacred. You don't question it without losing your job in many school systems, okay?
It's not Darwin's theory. It's the theory of evolution and the fact of evolution, of course. It's not like it's not a theology the way he likes to pretend it is. It's a colossal scumbag, dude.
The same thing happened in Russia 10, 15 years ago. If a teacher got up in their class and said, "Kids, I don't believe communism works,"
Oh my God.
he'd be out of a job and maybe out of the country or out of this life. They'd kill him or send him off to Siberia.
Give it a fucking rest, brother. Evolution is like communism, you see.
You get the same kind of academic Siberia, people sent off to academic Siberia if they don't support the evolution theory right here in America, the land of the free and the home of the slave.
Oh my God. He's this tax protesting nutcase. I forgot about that. You know, Russia used to send people out to Siberia, like way up north in the cold, and they would certainly die if they were sent to Siberia. It was their method of, you know, getting rid of undesirable people. When I was little, my dad actually, he went to high school, my dad did, with a guy named Richard. And Richard eventually became a psychologist. And he was good friends with my dad in school. And when I got a little bit, you know, when I turned like maybe 12 or something, my mom took me to therapy because it's good to go to therapy, right? Everybody should go to therapy at least once. My mom was going to therapy, so she brought me in to see her therapist, or see, you know, her therapist's office. And who was the therapist? None other than Richard, my dad's friend. And I had a meeting with Richard and just talked to him about my life, what was going on. My dad was like terribly abusive to me, like really violently abusive, like physically violently abusive. And I went in and I just talked to Richard about whatever. And Richard, when I left, told my mom that I was like lying and manipulative and taking advantage of the situation and stuff, and it was insane. And he recommended Siberia, some treatment that he made up, ? Or that somebody, I don't know. And it's basically where you send this kid to their bedroom indefinitely, like permanently. They don't talk to anybody, full solitary confinement. And that happened to me. They did that for an entire summer, literally 3 months. Every waking moment was spent in my bedroom. Every waking moment. No TV, no nothing. Just sitting in there. I started reading books, but I kind of got tired of books after a while. It was fucking insane. So anyway, Siberia, every time I hear that word, Siberia, it, you know, reminds me of that. But aside from that, like eventually I ended up homeschooling, and homeschooling, I wasn't isolated by force the same way in homeschooling. I was isolated by circumstance. Like there was just no one around. My dad slept all day because he took a lot of medicine. My mom worked all day. And I wasn't allowed to hang out with anybody outside of Jehovah's Witnesses, and there were none my age, so I was just alone, completely alone for years, literally 4 years straight, completely alone. And that shit will really fuck your head up, seriously. You should not be left alone like that. That is torture, literal. It is considered torture, actually, under the Geneva Conventions. Real disturbing stuff. Anyway. I thought it was interesting. I heard the word Siberia. I figured it'd be worth mentioning.
Mr. Eller told his teacher, Dan Clark, in Lafayette, Indiana, Mr. Eller was the superintendent, that he could not introduce creationism to his class.
Yep, that's correct. You can't do that.
So Dan Clark resigned. He quit. Many good teachers are dropping out of the public school system.
Good. Goodbye. I don't want you there. You have no place in the public school system if you're going to spread lies to the students.
Because they're not allowed to teach kids the truth. The problem is not the law. The law says you can teach creation. Not a problem to teach creation.
No, it's not a problem. You can teach it to your heart's content in church. The problem is not teaching creation. It's that you want to force kids who are not like in your belief system or whatever. You want to force kids to learn it who have nothing to do with you or any of your stupid shit.
Legally. The courts have ruled it's okay to teach creation, but the boss says don't do it. The ACLU, which is the American Communist Lawyers Union,
Oh my God.
they learned years ago all they have to do is threaten to sue, and the school will back down. Even though the ACLU knows they will lose the suit, doesn't matter, the threat of a suit is enough to make it.
They wouldn't lose a suit. They would not lose a lawsuit for any of these cases that Kent Hovind is presenting here. These are pretty clear-cut cases that have been litigated into the ground. And as a matter of fact, they were litigated around the time that Kent Hovind is doing this seminar episode. There was a lawsuit basically to determine whether intelligent design can be taught in schools. And the determination was no, it can't, because it's fucking nonsense.
The teachers get fired. Just the threat of a suit. And so that's what's happening. We're losing by default. They're not even putting up a good fight.
Uh-huh.
Dean Kenyon was a professor at San Francisco State University in San Francisco. He wrote many books about evolution. He was the poster boy for the evolutionist. He was a strong believer in the theory. And one day he got converted and began to believe in creation. And they fired him. He sued. They put him back in as a lab assistant, washing test tubes, which the students do normally. And here's a guy, 20-year, I believe, tenured professor. Finally, after a long battle, he was reinstated with his job. But if he hadn't been tenured, he wouldn't have kept his job.
He shouldn't keep his job if he's spreading this stupid bullshit, obviously.
Up in the Dean Kenyon. He wrote the book Of Pandas and People, which you can get through our ministry.
Right. I saw that mentioned earlier, Of Pandas and People. It's some ridiculous creationist garbage. And I considered watching it on stream, but I don't think it would even be worth it. It seems like it's boring as sin. And, well, sin is not terribly boring, I guess. It's pretty entertaining, actually. But it's really boring, Of Pandas and People, I guess. So not worth watching.
Dr. Denny at Texas Tech University had on his website for years that if you wanted to get recommended for medical school, he's from Lubbock, Texas, that you had to confess to believing in evolution. If you don't believe in...
No, you have to confess to believing in... What a scumbag, dude. You have to accept evolution to work in a field that heavily relies on an understanding of evolution to be able to do your job adequately, obviously.
Evolution, he's not going to recommend you for medical school. When I spoke in Lubbock, Texas in the fall of 2002, the students there got together and offered Denny $900 if he would debate me. He refused. He wouldn't debate for 2 hours for $900.
Probably because he knows that Kent Hovind is a scam artist who is only out to further his own goals and interests at the expense of others.
I don't know how much he makes an hour, but I suspect it's not quite that much. So, Mr. Denny, I'll come anytime, anywhere, and take you on intellectually in a debate on creation evolution. Evolution is one of the dumbest ideas in the history of humanity, and the devil is laughing at you for believing in that silly theory. And if you don't trust Christ, you're going to go to hell. I'm not your enemy, I'm your friend. I don't want to see you go to hell.
Uh-huh.
I like to see you get converted. But what you're doing is unfair and certainly unwise, and I think un-American. To require a student to believe a certain religion, and all you have is a religious worldview of evolution, and you require students to believe that before you give them a recommendation letter. Come on, grow up. Let kids learn the truth.
Right. Oh, great. Yes, they should learn the truth. Kent Hovind is not trying to teach kids the truth, obviously.
We can go on and on how people are discriminated against because of their belief in creation. Patrick Henry College was notified they were going to deny their recommendation to be accredited simply because they didn't believe in evolution. We'll have lots of information on our website about how students or universities or teachers are discriminated against because of their belief in creation.
Good. Yes, I want that. They should be discriminated against getting a job in the field if they believe in creationism. Absolutely. They should not be in the public square teaching children if they believe that stupid shit. We need more discrimination against bad ideas.
Now, it wasn't always this way. If you go back in the past, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, all the scientists believed in creation. Here's a list of quite a few scientists: Francis Bacon, Johann Kepler, Blaise Pascal, Robert Boyle, Isaac Newton. These guys were the founders of major branches of science, Carolus Linnaeus, and they were creationists. George Cuvier, on and on the list.
And they were creationists? I mean, half the people he named were not young earth creationists in the sense that they were trying to spread the idea, contrary to science, that the Earth is 6,000 years old, that evolution is fake and everything else. They just believed in God. That's it. They just believed in God. Like Newton was just a believer. That's all there was to it. And also probably a virgin all the way up to his dying breath, to my understanding. The point is, Kent Hovind is trying to claim them like they are, warriors on his side when that's just complete and total fucking nonsense.
Goes of hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of very famous scientists who were creationists. Not always young Earth creationists, but certainly creationists, and many were young Earth creationists. Richard Owen, Louis Agassiz, James Joule. All you got to do is notice, folks, nearly all branches of science are started by people who believed in creation, not people who believed in evolution. The evolutionists don't come up with anything. They don't create anything. They come in and take over an institution that's already going, and many Christian colleges have been taken over by evolutionists. Harvard, Princeton, Yale started off as Christian schools, and now they've been taken over by those who believe in evolution.
Again, you can be Christian and also accept evolution. The two are not mutually exclusive. You cannot be a young Earth creationist who thinks the Earth was created last Thursday, and also someone who accepts evolution. Obviously, that's impossible. But Kent Hovind wants to conflate some of these meanings.
The evolutionists don't go start something. They just take over like a leech, or a tick, or a parasite, what somebody else has already created. Wernher von Braun, space scientist, was a strong believer in creation.
Wow, dude. Wernher von Braun, I believe, was not a space scientist, quote unquote, but a Nazi. I think he was one of the ones that was brought in through Operation Paperclip, if I'm not mistaken, which is that thing, that government program where the U.S. government forgave the war crimes of a bunch of Nazis and shipped them over to the United States so that they wouldn't be poached by Russia or whatever. And I'm pretty sure Wernher von Braun was one of those. He was the head of NASA for a while. Was he a young Earth creationist? I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. Von in his name is special. It means from. And it basically means that he's a prince of some sort. Somebody very, very special and high up. Like Prince Philip von Hessen. He was a prince and very influential and worked for Hitler. He was from the Austrian royal family or whatever, if I remember. No, Wernher von Braun was not a young Earth creationist. This is just a flat-out lie. This is just not true at all. He specifically stated, if fundamentalistic religion means belief that the book of Genesis gives a correct scientific account of how the world came into being, that 4004 BC is the date of the origin of the Earth, and that all living things were created in their final form rather than developed through evolutionary survival of the fittest processes, then I am most emphatically not a believer in fundamental religion. That's what Wernher von Braun actually said, quote unquote. Now, one more time, what did he say about him?
Wernher von Braun, space scientist, was a strong believer in creation.
No, this is the type of shit right here that I'm talking about. It's like Kent Hovind just flat out bald-faced fucking lies about stuff. There is no truth value to what he just said. It is completely false. It is a lie. And it blows me away to hear somebody so brazenly, plainly lie like that. I feel like I'm not used to hearing somebody so brazenly make something up completely and thoroughly. It's really crazy. I'm sorry, one more thing about Wernher von Braun. It's weird to me that Kent Hovind chose to use him as proof of creationism. Why him? He's probably most famous for being that, hang on. I'm just verifying to be sure. Let's see, 1 second. Yeah, he I was right about this. I was pretty sure. He was one of the scientists who was grabbed in Operation Paperclip. He was a Nazi scientist, who basically, when he was in Germany, was working as an engineer or whatever, a scientist, a space scientist or whatever. And he was benefiting from slave labor of Jews in concentration camps. They were building missiles for him and stuff so that he could run tests on things or whatever. And he was benefiting from it. He didn't give a fuck. And after World War II, let's see, at least 10,000 people died in the V2 production program at the Mittelbau Dora concentration camp system. twice the number killed by the rockets themselves. So they literally killed more Jews in the production of these rockets than the rockets killed. That's crazy. Von Braun and several key associates who later worked on the U.S. space program were connected to these crimes. Von Braun himself handpicked people from concentration camps, including Buchenwald, to work as slave labor building his rockets. Von Braun had been a Nazi party member and SS officer and was at least tangentially involved in the murderous exploitation of concentration camp prisoners in missile production. And then there was a cover-up in, rapid deterioration of relations with the Soviet Union made the immigration of ex-Nazis more palatable to the American government and public, making it easier to sweep their past under the rug. The growing anti-communist paranoia of the early Cold War allowed the Defense Department to sweep their Nazi records under the rug, where the data largely stayed until the 80s. Why would he pick him? You think that this guy is somebody to, like, respect and honor? Aren't there other people that you could have lied about? Oh my God.
There are quite a few books on this topic. You can see our website, drdino.com, and get more. Okay, next question. What about separation of church and state? Is it okay to discuss creation in public schools?
No.
Well, first place, the phrase separation of church and state is not found in the Constitution.
Every time a creationist says this, I remind them that the phrase gun rights is not in the Constitution either, in the exact same way. People say the Second Amendment talks about, like, the right to keep and bear arms and well-regulated militia and all of that, and it pertains to gun rights. It affects gun rights heavily, right? But the words gun rights are not in the Constitution. In the same way, there's no phrase that says separation of church and state. That phrase doesn't exist in the Constitution, but the first sentence of the First Amendment of the Constitution is all about separation of church and state.
Don't let somebody tell you that the law says it has to be a separation of church and state. That's baloney. That phrase was used by Thomas Jefferson in a letter that he wrote to some pastors in the Danbury Association, a Baptist association in Connecticut.
Yes, and he was describing what the First Amendment meant, what he intended when that was, like, recorded or whatever. That was the point. So the term isn't in there, but he was describing the contents of the First Amendment. This is plainly an attempt to erase parts of the Constitution that you don't like.
He's the one that said, the First Amendment has erected a wall of separation between church and state. Thomas Jefferson said that. It's not in the Constitution. And by the way, if there's a wall between the two, it's a one-dimensional wall. It keeps the government out of the church. It was not designed to keep the church out of the government.
That's just not true. It was intentionally, explicitly, overtly designed to keep the church out of the government. He's just making shit up right now.
So,
by the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there.
There's no such thing as separation of church and state found in the Constitution. The fact of the matter is, the Founding Fathers, when they gave the First Amendment, Article 1, the same day, I believe, voted to give, I think, $7,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 something to a mission in St. Louis to help a Catholic mission reach the Indians there with what they thought was the gospel.
The U.S. government has always supported nonprofits and charitable efforts. And those charitable efforts back then included funding church activities from time to time, printing Bibles and things like that. But there is, and absolutely was, beyond a shadow of a doubt, a separation between church and state.
So you just go through the history, go to...
Oh, yeah. They believed that it served as a public good to kind of act as a nonprofit, as a church or whatever, not just churches, but nonprofit organizations generally. And they would subsidize, the government would subsidize these things, and they still do. I believe personally, though, that you shouldn't get any kind of subsidies, or including in the form of tax exemption, should not get anything like that, unless you're proving that you're providing a public good, a public service. And that isn't that's assumed with churches right now. That shouldn't be the default. You should have to actively prove that you are continuing to serve a public good if you want tax-exempt status, in one man's humble opinion.
Wallbuilders.com, David Barton's excellent website.
Oh, God, dude. David Barton's fucking awful. There is nothing good about that guy. I'll tell you about him in a second.
It's the gospel. So you just go through the history, go to wallbuilders.com, David Barton's excellent website, and get some of his material, and you can see how that the Founding Fathers were certainly strong believers in creation and had no intention of the government getting involved in the church, but they had every intention of the church getting involved in the government.
It's just a lie. Now, regarding David Barton, he is famous for being in he was in a movie that played in pretty much every single church across the country at some point. Nearly every kid has probably seen this. Certainly every creationist kid, certainly every evangelical kind of right-wing kid from a right-wing family has seen his little church and state movies or whatever in their church. You may recognize him when I show you. He's said some egregious, disgusting things. Yeah, here. These are the 3 videos I was looking for right here, actually. In 2016, this is David Barton. He was the head of a super PAC for Ted Cruz. And after 2016, that super PAC went to Donald Trump. And it eventually became, if I'm not mistaken, the largest super PAC, the largest Trump super PAC. So now Barton is the head of the largest Trump super PAC. Barton claims to be a constitutional scholar and expert. He's not. He has a 4-year degree from a Christian university, an evangelical university in some religious studies something or other. I don't even remember. It's a bullshit degree that's not even accredited, if I'm not mistaken. And he wrote a book in the 90s that was so wrong, so incorrect about everything that the publisher pulled it from the bookshelves. In the 90s, I think, he wrote about this group in the Revolutionary War called the Black Robe Regiment, where they would be up there preaching, and after they were done preaching on Sunday, they would pull their black robes off, and they'd be wearing military attire under their black robes, and they would take their whole church out back and do rifle training and plug them into the broader Continental Army as a regiment, basically. That's not true. That's completely fucking made up. Literally none of that happened. Not one single part of what I just described took place. That was fabricated by David Barton. He made that up. He invented the term Black Robe Regiment and invented the bullshit story behind it in the 90s. And the book was pulled off the shelves by the publisher because it was so egregiously incorrect about everything. That's David Barton. That is who Kent Hovind just mentioned.
Were certainly strong believers in creation and had no intention of the government getting involved in the church, but they had every intention of the church getting involved in the government. And the idea of...
So let me just play a couple of clips from David Barton so you know who Kent Hovind is talking about here.
We're getting attacked because you love Trump and you're a cult for Trump. What happens is you cannot back away from engaging in the debate. This is where you run to the roar. And if they want to call me a homophobe, I say, oh, so you're a heterophobe, are you? Just turn it back in the other direction. And so you've got this
Well, way to completely shut your fucking brain off and not consider what people are saying to you. I doubt he's being called a homophobe to his face anyway. People are probably, he's probably never around the type of people that would level that criticism at him.
Against heterosexual people, you can't disengage from the debate just because they're being mean or just because they're saying things about you.
Here's another one. This is also David Barton saying some real psychotic shit, dude. He literally says he thinks we should be able to own nuclear weapons as just private citizens.
The greatest people killer of all has been government. Nothing has killed more people than government has killed. And so when you look at that, the Founding Fathers believed that the people should be able to have enough arms in place to be able to remind their government, you don't want to mess with us. You don't want to come after us. Well, if all we've got is pea shooters and they've got 50 caliber machine guns, that's not the point of the First Amendment, because they point out consistently, Patrick Henry and George Mason and others, that the greatest threat to your loss of guns will come from government, not...
This is just complete bullshit. If you're going to fight against the government from inside, you having nukes is not going to help. It doesn't matter if the government has nukes. They're not going to nuke their own country. Even Russia wouldn't nuke their own country. Russia could be taken from within. Like a while back, Putin's old ally, the head of Werner Group, what was his name? I forget. he sent troops through the Russian streets to take over. Like, they took over entire towns. This is just a couple years ago. And he ended up dying, the guy did, the head of the Werner Group. But Putin didn't drop nukes on him. The government won't drop nukes on their own people. They just never have. They never did. They never will. That's just not how it works generally. Because the government needs the valuable infrastructure that exists in those areas to continue the war effort. So this is just a brazen attempt to get your hands on a nuke, it seems to me.
From criminals or others. And so they were very adamant that you be able to have that, which is why we see in Boston, they didn't care if you have a cannon. You can have a cannon, but please don't shoot it in town or within a mile of town. It's just so loud. I mean, it wasn't the fact of having a cannon. It was just, it's a little loud just to be shooting off just for fun. So in the same way, I don't want to see my neighbor stockpile nuclear bombs. Yeah, I don't want to see it, but I don't care if he has one because he should have the same rights. But you say,
don't you love it how he doesn't have that same kind of perspective for gay rights? There's an exception for gay rights. Yeah, it's fine if they own a nuclear weapon. I just don't want it to be out in the open and see it. But no, it's not okay for you to be gay even in private. Even in your own life, you can't be gay.
Well, I don't think private citizens should have nuclear weapons. But if you've been trained with responsibility and morality and the concept of when and where you use them, the Founding Fathers are trained extensively in the concept of defensive warfare. You don't start anything. Now, if somebody else starts it, you can take it on, but you don't start it. I don't care if my neighbor has a nuclear weapon as long as he has that defensive concept that he will never use that unless it's being used against him.
This is the belief that we should live in a world where we can own nukes because Christians are moral. And if everybody was a Christian, we wouldn't have to worry about immoral use of nukes. So we have to turn everybody Christian. And while we're at it, let's legalize people owning nuclear weapons. Just regular people around. Fucking insane. Check this one out from David Barton.
The northern states were very anti-slavery because they were very Bible-oriented. The southern states were very Christian-professing, but they didn't know much about the Bible, and they didn't read it much.
That's complete nonsense. Is that what you think today, that the South is, Bible-professing, but they don't know much about it? Nobody knew much about the Bible. Nobody. They all knew about the same amount. But the South claimed that slavery was right because the Bible pretty clearly endorses slavery. Clear as day. It says slavery is a good thing. You should do it. It describes how.
Just profess to be Christians.
So the old, back in the Civil War era, they actually used the Bible to justify slavery. They didn't just profess to be Christians. They used the Bible verses to justify it. Now check this one out. This is the one that I eventually want to get to.
So say there's some religious activity in public. Maybe somebody wants to pray over their lunch at school and they're told they can't do that. And they say, you can't do that because of separation of church and state. Is that what separation of church and state really means? They will say yes. Here's the way you respond.
It's nonsense. Nobody would say yes because no one has a problem with anybody praying over their lunch at school. That's not against the law. It's not against separation of church and state. Nobody gives a fuck. Teachers can pray over their lunch. Students can pray over their lunch. Nobody cares. Fucking vile how much these people are willing to lie, just flat out fucking lie to your face to gain some kind of benefit. Really disgusting. Okay, let's hear his response to somebody saying you can't pray over your lunch at school.
Number one, where does that phrase come from? And when they say the Constitution, you say, would you please read it for me? Because when they go there, they'll never find it. It does not appear anywhere in the Constitution.
Again, separation of church and state is not in the Constitution, just like the term gun rights isn't in the Constitution. The concepts are there.
And the second thing you do is, wait, we just read the Constitution. It says Congress shall make no law. How does a kid praying over their lunch mean the same as Congress making a law?
That's a good question. It has nothing to do with that. And the Congress making no law respecting the establishment of religion actually applies to a lot more than just Congress by the way that it's written. And again, it was written that way intentionally. It doesn't just apply to Congress. It applies to a whole bunch of people all the way down the chain. It applies to every branch of government that they cannot, that they must support separation of church and state. And that was affirmed by the Supreme Court multiple times. of the era, the Supreme Court of the era, and later on. So I guess the judicial branch just doesn't exist in his mind, apparently.
And the third thing you ask them is, and by the way, if praying over your lunch is so bad, why did we do it for 180 years?
Like, people are still doing it. What the fuck are you talking about? We did it for 180 years. People pray over their fucking lunch.
The Constitution, and it's only been in recent years that we have not done that. Did we just invent separation of church and state? No, it's been there from the beginning, but we've twisted it to mean something that it doesn't mean. So if you ask them those three questions, you can win your argument.
Wall builders. Anyway, it's just complete fucking nonsense. That's who David Barton is. Really disgusting that they're willing to lie so brazenly like that. So why can you pray over your lunch at school, but you can't preach your gospel in the school play? The school, I think that any school activities that students are required to participate in, they cannot force children to be involved in that. They cannot favor one religion over another. So they can force your student to be involved, actually, if they want, but they have to allow all religions to take part in this if they want to. So if there's a Satanist that wants to get their kid involved in the school play and you have a bunch of stupid Christian shit in there, you have to allow the Satanist to be involved. That's the whole thing.
Wallbuilders.com, David Barton's excellent website, and get some of his material, and you can see how that the Founding Fathers were certainly strong believers in creation and had no intention
Nonsense.
of the government getting involved in the church, but they had every intention of the church getting involved in the government. And the idea of no Christianity in public schools would have been anathema to the Founding Fathers. They would have sent those guys off on a ship to some other country.
Bullshit.
Okay.
They were the ones that established these laws, rules, and expectations in the first place.